The studio lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and the nation was watching as judge. John Roberts made a rare appearance on a live panel discussion, an event many deemed unusual given the Chief Justice's historically quiet stance on public affairs outside courtrooms. Sharing the stage with him was none other than Representative Jasmine Crockett, a rising star in political circles known for her sharp intellect, no-nonsense, rhetoric, and fierce advocacy for civil rights. The producers had framed the show as a conversation on constitutional balance and the role of modern courts in American democracy. But it quickly evolved into something far more dramatic. It started respectfully, with Roberts outlining what he viewed as judicial neutrality in politically heated times, asserting the Supreme Court's role was to interpret, not create law. Jasmine nodded, listening carefully. But things took a drastic turn when Roberts, perhaps trying to defend past controversial decisions, shifted blame onto legislators, claiming Congress abdicated their responsibility, leaving judges to mop up decades of dysfunction. Jasmine didn't flinch but calmly replied, with all due respect, the judiciary has often overstepped in ways that have suppressed rights rather than protected them. Let's not clean up, that's control. The tension could be felt across the room, a subtle electric charge building between two powerful voices on opposite ends of institutional authority. The atmosphere thickened as Roberts, visibly unsettled by Crockett's critique, adjusted his posture and responded with an edge. I think it's rich, he said sharply, for a member of Congress to lecture the judiciary on overreach. When your branch has failed to codify basic rights and kicks the can down the road at every opportunity. That tone shift did not go unnoticed by the audience or Crockett, who narrowed her eyes slightly but remained composed. That would be compelling, she answered, if the court hadn't spent the last decade undoing protections the people fought tooth and nail to achieve. It was clear by now the gloves were coming off. The moderator attempted to pivot to a lighter question, but neither participant budged. Roberts, unusually animated, leaned forward and without realizing the mic intensity raised his voice. Maybe if you and your colleagues spent more time legislating and less time grandstanding on television, you wouldn't be stuck interpreting. What you refused to clarify, collective gasp rippled through the audience. The volume, the finger-pointing, the accusation, it was all very uncharacteristic of the Chief Justice, and the shock value of the moment was palpable. Social media instantly lit up with posts like, "Did John Roberts just scream on live TV? And this is not the composed court figure we thought we knew." Jasmine, never one to be shaken by theatrics, responded not with an equal display of volume or emotion, but with a silence so intentional it was deafening. She folded her hands, took a breath, and looked directly at Roberts. I was elected by the people. You were appointed. I don't answer to a club of robes. I answer to communities that feel the very impact of your decisions on their lives. So if we're talking grandstanding, let's talk about the bench-playing politics under the guise of impartiality. The audience erupted not in chaos, but in that stunned silence of witnessing something seismic. Crockett didn't yell. She didn't flinch. She let the weight of her words hang in the air, knowing they would find their mark. Roberts blinked rapidly, visibly unsettled now. His attempt at dominance had failed to intimidate. Instead, it revealed something raw and brittle beneath his usual judicial polish. He tried to muster a rebuttal, but Crockett wasn't done. And if interpretation is your only job, she continued coolly, maybe ask why so many of your interpretations disproportionately harm the same people over and over again. It's almost like it's not interpretation. It's preference. By the time the moderator regained control, both figures had said more in 5 minutes than most panels yield in an hour. The remaining discussion limped forward awkwardly, with Roberts noticeably quieter, his earlier fire having burned out into occasional short responses. Crockett, in contrast, maintained a steady presence, speaking only when necessary and letting her earlier statements carry the weight. After the show ended, producers whispered that Roberts left the building quickly, avoiding press and post-show commentary. Jasmine stayed behind, casually conversing with guests and appearing entirely unfazed. Within an hour, edited clips of the exchange began circulating on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Under titles like Crockett Shuts Down, SCOTUS Power Play, and Judge Screams, Jasmine Destroys Calmly. News outlets scrambled to dissect the fallout. Some legal analysts criticized Roberts for losing composure, calling it a breach of judicial decorum. Others defended his frustration, citing years of political pressure and attacks on the court. But the consensus across both media and public forums was clear. Jasmine Crockett's cool. Poi's clapback had become a defining viral moment. Asterisk talk shows replayed the moment in slow motion, dissecting every facial expression, every pause, every flicker of emotion. On CNN, one commentator noted, "We've seen political leaders go toe-to-toe, but rarely do we see a Supreme Court justice visibly rattled on live television." Another pundit on MSNBC said, "Crockett proved that strength doesn't require volume, it requires clarity." Meanwhile, memes exploded. One had Crockett's face superimposed over a volcano labeled calm but devastating. Another featured Roberts next to a mic with the caption, "Volume does not equal victory." At late night, comedians poked fun at the moment, some imagining Roberts in anger management classes or texting Clarence Thomas for damage control tips. But beyond the satire, a deeper conversation took root about judicial overreach, about racial and gender dynamics in elite power spaces, about the consequences of courtroom temperament bleeding into public spaces. Asterisk while Roberts returned to silence in the days that followed, issuing no public statement. His court's spokesperson issued a vague clarification. The Chief Justice appeared in good faith to discuss judicial philosophy and regrets any appearance of discord. The internet wasn't interested in regret. They were interested in the unfiltered humanity that had spilled onto their screens. And Jasmine? She leaned into the moment just enough to underline the message, tweeting simply, "Calm doesn't mean quiet, means controlled." That post alone was retweeted over 200,000 times. In interviews that followed, she maintained her stance but avoided name-calling, saying, "I don't think the judiciary should be immune to challenge, especially when their decisions dictate whether people thrive or merely survive." Asterisk, as a result of the confrontation, national discussions on court reform were reinvigorated. Civic groups began referencing the exchange in petitions demanding term limits and transparency for Supreme Court justices. Law students posted side-by-side comparisons of Crockett's constitutional interpretations against Roberts's more conservative leanings, using the moment as a teachable case study. Historians likened it to Thurgood Marshall's fiercest moments where law met lived reality. Some critics accused Crockett of grandstanding, but most saw something more important: a young black congresswoman refusing to shrink beneath the weight of authority, and instead holding her ground with surgical precision, became a new template for modern dissent, not shouted down, but delivered with piercing calm.